All right, folks, we are right at 2 o'clock. So that being said, we'll go ahead and start with today's webinar. So again, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's grant solicitation webinar, the OJJDP FY 2020 Tribal Children's Advocacy Center Expansion Initiative for Child Abuse Victims Solicitation. Again, my name is William Moore, and I am with OJJDP's National Training and Technical Assistance Center. And as your technical host, I would like to take a couple of minutes to discuss a few features of the Adobe Connect webinar platform and provide a few announcements to keep in mind. Please note that today's event is being recorded. For those wishing to download a copy of important documents and resources related to today's webinar, you may do so by locating the Handouts pod directly above the chat area. Here, you will also find an FAQ for webinar participants that will likely address any technical related questions. Click on the name of the file, then click the download button. At the end of today's webinar, there will be a Q&A session where the presenter will address some of your questions posed during the presentation. Please type your questions into the chat box as they arise. For those of you participating in today's webinar as a group, please take a minute to help us count. If you are viewing by yourself, there's no need to type anything at this time. If you are viewing in a group, go to the chat window and type in the total number of additional people in the room with you today. If you're viewing alone, there's no need to type anything at this time. Only the number of additional people in the room with you today. Again, thank you all for joining us today. I will now turn it over to Kristen Crackey for today's webinar. Kristen, take it away.
Thank you very much, William. Welcome, everyone. I am very glad to have you join us for this webinar to discuss and feature our new Tribal Children's Advocacy Center Expansion Initiative. This is a new solicitation opportunity for OJJDP, and we are very pleased to be able to provide this resource via grant to the field. Under the webinar today, we're going to discuss a general overview of the program, provide highlights related to the goals and objectives, and cover the basic application requirements. We'll take a few questions as we are able at the end of the solicitation, or at the end of the webinar. However, we will need to be mindful in how we're responding to questions to limit them to what exists in the solicitation. So I'll be somewhat limited in what I can answer directly over the webinar, but we do have resources for you for follow-up questions where we can respond in writing to anything that isn't covered today. So the solicitation is titled OJJDP FY 2020 Tribal Children's Advocacy Center Expansion Initiative, and it can be found at the URL posted here. Applications are due by just before midnight on March 25th, 2020. This is a 5-year grant program made as a cooperative agreement award. This means that there will be direct partnership between OJJDP and the selected applicants or the awardees. There will be a close working relationship, and OJJDP will participate with you in the implementation and will have more active involvement. The overall, and I should say there is some language in the solicitation specific to cooperative agreements and that partnership relationship, so I'd refer people to that information. But this is just to point out to you all as potential applicants that this is a cooperative agreement award not a grant, which may be more familiar to other people or to applicants. The overall goal of this initiative is to increase the coverage and capacity of child advocacy center services and I'm seeing a typo, not just Alaska, but all through the lower 48 as well. So all of American Indian, Alaska Native Indian country. The objectives and deliverables for this initiative are to fund the development of new satellite child advocacy centers in Indian country to expand coverage of existing accredited child advocacy centers for interested federally recognized tribes. So new satellite CAC, short for Child Advocacy Centers, new satellites is a designation provided by the National Children's Alliance, who is the national organization responsible for accreditation related to children's advocacy centers. So this award is specific to creating satellite CACs. And in order to do that, applicants must be working through and with an existing accredited CAC. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. So eligibility requires then that there be two partners, one, a federally recognized tribe, and two, a fully accredited member of the National Children's Alliance who's working with the tribe. So either, and we'll talk a little further about this, either eligible entity can be the lead applicant, but you must have both in your application. Eligible applicants that propose to provide direct services to youth must not include youth who are age 18 or older in the population they serve. So this is for youth 17 and younger. Just an added resource here for you related to determining eligibility. Through the National Children's Alliance membership requirements, you can click on this link to understand the designations between a satellite CAC and a fully accredited CAC and the like. I should mention as well that on the National Children's Alliance website, there's also maps that show the locations of CACs throughout the country and including those already existing in tribal areas. There's a tribal map as well as state-specific maps to help orient anyone who's looking for a fully accredited CAC partner. That would be a useful resource for you. So in terms of new satellite CACs, the goal of the new satellites is to expand the coverage of an existing fully accredited CAC to tribe and tribal areas, to extend that reach to serve tribal population of youth and their families. Satellite CACs are child-friendly facilities offering on-site forensic interviews and victim advocacy services under the sponsorship and oversight of the National Children's Alliance fully accredited CAC. Funding will support the activities necessary to develop and implement the satellite CAC. Did I go? Let's see. Okay, so this is where I was mentioning that if a fully recognized tribe applies as the lead applicant, the tribe will need to provide detailed information on the accredited CAC they are working with to develop that satellite CAC. You should come in as co-applicants. The tribe can be the lead, but needs to have a fully accredited CAC partner. The reverse is also true. So conversely, if a fully accredited CAC is interested in applying as the lead, the CAC is required to submit a copy of the tribal resolution outlining the partnership. So it would be my recommendation and guidance that whoever the lead applicant is, that the resolution and memorandum of understanding, the agreement between the two entities is clearly spelled out and provided in the application. So who is determined as lead is up to the applicants and is driven by lots of factors related to the oversight and management of the grant and who has the organizational capacity, things like that. So there's a lot of factors that would go into determining who would be lead, but for us, either works. So in terms of the grant solicitation, or for this cooperative agreement, what is available is that OJJDP intends to make awards up to 4, although that is a flexible number. But what is made available to the applicants that are selected through this solicitation is up to $750,000 to provide that support for 60 months or 5 years, as mentioned previously, as a cooperative agreement. OJJDP intends to provide support for $3 million in funds for new satellite CACs. Although, just like the number of up to 4, there is some flexibility in that number, but those are our estimates. So in terms of the solicitation, I'd like to highlight and lift up to you the application elements. They are listed on pages 8 and 9 of the solicitation. I will not go over all of those, so it's very important to focus very specifically on pages 8 and 9 of the solicitation. However, we ask you to describe the problem that this funding or project will solve, so really outlining your need for a satellite CAC and the issues related to and the data or statistics that you have related to child victims needing child advocacy services in your area and what that area is. We also ask that you describe how the project will operate throughout that 5 years, that 5-year period, and describe the specific strategies that you will use to address the goals and objectives of developing and implementing this new satellite CAC. So the first, description of the problem is laying the framework and the foundation for us and reviewing that application about the problem and the scope of work, or the scope of the problem in the area that you're going to be working within. And the second bullet is really outlining in detail how you plan to solve that problem through implementation of this satellite CAC and the specific details about how you're going to do that, how you'll operationalize the new satellite. And then, as mentioned previously, but is noted on page 9, is the requirement to demonstrate partnership through letters of support, MOUs, tribal resolutions, so that the during the review process, it's very clear that both partners, what both partners are committing to, and that both partners are at the table. So I'll just highlight a couple of OJP priority areas that are in all of our solicitations this year related to having applications that are proposing to address challenges in rural communities, asking you to describe that geographic area, and encouraging program investment in economically distressed communities. There's detailed information in the solicitation about the qualified opportunity zones, and would ask that you turn to those sections of the solicitation to see if and how they apply to you. The same sort of highlight for you related to performance measures. We include performance measures in all of our solicitations as required legislatively. So we will be asking all applicants to respond upon award to the performance measures necessary for tracking their progress on goals and objectives. However, please note that during the application stage of this process, you are not required to submit performance data with your application. The performance measures are there to alert you and let you know that you will be required to track data related to those performance measures should you be selected for award. So it's for your awareness. You do not need to provide data as a part of your application. For more information about the performance measurement process and system, you can go to this URL. I should say that URL will help you have a sense of how performance measures are tracked. If you have concerns about how you as an applicant might do that upon award, there are some tools and resources there that will help give you an idea or a sense of how that process works. And then we'll just review very briefly the application checklist. If you are new to applying to federal funds, please review Appendix B on what an applicant should do. That's on page 15. And there's a checklist on page 16, which will be useful to make sure you've included everything. Please note that the two critical areas for this application are program narrative and the budget and budget narrative. Those are the critical application elements. However, that's not in that the things mentioned earlier in this webinar, like the partnership agreements, tribal resolutions, are also important. A critical element is just a designation, but we still are looking for those other required documents, partnership agreements, and details related to your project design. It's just these two things related to program narrative and budget are required for your application to even be reviewed. All right, so this slide just provides some additional resources and URLs related to basic grant administration and application submissions, information that you might need related to identifying your DUNS or a SAM number. So this is just for general application submission. So just some general tips is make sure as you're working through the application that you are answering every question in that checklist criteria, that you are responding to the specific elements outlined in the narrative sections on page, I think it was page 8 and 9 that I referenced earlier. The most important thing that I would want to make sure people are submitting at least 2 days, and I would even recommend a week. As we get into solicitation season, the system gets very bogged down, and if there's a technical glitch that prevents you from being able to submit the application, you will miss the opportunity to be considered for this award. So we always advise applicants to submit well in advance, particularly those last couple of days. There are a lot of applicants that have had problems because of the volume of submission and waited too late and then not been able to get technical support in time to meet the deadline. So just a good tip. Here's some other links related to the solicitation. So this is the RFP link again, where you can find that program announcement. There are also a list of FAQs that is a good summary for the criteria and the content that we just reviewed in this webinar. And then there's a resource guide, again, for how to apply for OJP, how to submit OJP grant applications. And then for your reference, in terms of follow-up questions, we do have the response center. That is where all inquiries and questions related to the solicitation should go. We do have some time that we can clarify anything that was said today. But again, as I indicated at the beginning of the webinar, we can clarify what's in the solicitation and what I've said on the webinar, but can't really go beyond that. So you could submit follow-up questions to the response center if you have anything more that we're not able to address today. And with that, I will turn it back to William, and then we can see if there's some questions.
All right, great. And right before we do go into the questions, I did want to do a quick poll for everyone just to allow for folks to gather some of the questions that they may have. And so, Kristen, do you mind if you just jump to the poll really quickly, and then we can come back for questions for Q&A for the remainder?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay, great. So for those who've joined us, as you can see, we just have a quick poll for you, and just wanted to know, how do you plan on applying the information from this webinar that you learned today to your work? And you can complete that information. Also, right below here, you can see that we have another poll. We want to know, are you representing a tribe or a child advocacy? And I need to spell that better. Advocacy agency, excuse me. Child Advocacy Center. And you can type your answer there. So again, go ahead and feel free to just identify how you plan to apply the information that you learned today. And then also if you're representing a tribe or a CAC as well. And you can feel free to type in that information. And I'll give folks just a few minutes to do that. And while you're doing that, feel free to think of any of your questions that you have for Kristen as well. And we'll go right back and allow for you to type in your questions. And we'll follow up after that. I'm going to give folks maybe about another minute here to submit their questions and submit their answers. All right. Good amount of responses coming in as well. Thank you all. Okay. All right. I'll give you guys maybe about another 15 or so seconds if you'd like. Just type your answer in to determine if you're representing a tribe or a CAC, a Child Advocacy Center as well. Feel free to continue to submit that information. All right. Okay, actually, I see more people are typing in, so I'll give you guys maybe a couple more seconds because I see you all are answering the second poll there if you're representing a tribe or a Child Advocacy Center. For those who have utilized Adobe Connect before, it's easy to do. You can just take your mouse, put it right there in the area where it says type your answer, and then you can type your answer there. And then for the other poll there, the little box that's right next to your answer, you can go ahead and just click it, and that will allow for you to submit your answers there as well. All right. Okay. All right, great. Looks like we're slowing down a little bit. Looks like a lot of people have went ahead and provide their information here. So thank you all for taking a couple of minutes just to do that poll there. I'll go ahead and move back to the main area here. In doing that, just a couple of brief announcements that I can go through for you all. Just some reminders before we jump right into the Q&A. If you have a question, feel free to go ahead and type your question there in the chat area while I go through the announcements here. So the first announcement that I want to let you all know about is to please, if you have any type of questions or would like to stay in touch with OJJDP's INTAC, our contact information is here on this slide. Also, we would love for you to find us on Facebook and like us on Facebook. You can also join our listserv as well. If you have any questions or would like to get in contact with OJJDP, you can feel free to submit your information or any questions that you may have to either the email address located here, or you can visit the website here. or if you'd like to sign up for the OJJDP Youth Just listserv, you can click here on this live link, and it will allow for you to sign up as well. All of the links here are live. Do you have a training or technical assistance need? Well, if so, please submit a request via OJJDP's TTA 360 platform, which is located on this link as well. Please join us for a few upcoming events that we have. We have the OJJDP FY 2020 Training and Technical Assistance to Support Children's Advocacy Centers serving American Indian and Alaska Native communities solicitation that's coming up March 10th. We also have the FY 2020 strategy to support CEV, children exposed to violence solicitation, that's coming up. Also note that we have a couple of other events. On March 12th, we have the Why Housing Matters for Family Recovery, Stability, and Public Safety webinar. And then we also have the webinar coming up on April 23rd, Why Quality Legal Representation Matters for Families Affected by Substance Use Disorders. So we have those two coming up as well. All right, so that being said, I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to Kristen that has a couple of questions that have come in. Kristen, will also leave up your information here, including the response center here on the screen so that our audience can see the information for the response center as well. So Kristen, feel free to take it away with the Q&A.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. So a couple of things to clarify. The solicitation closes April 7th. I misspoke. I'm mixing up the Alaska Child Advocacy Center expansion with this one. So my apologies. The close date is April 7th. That gives applicants more time. There was a question about training and technical assistance and outreach during year one. The answer to that question is that this solicitation is focused on operational expenses for the development of a new satellite CAC. In doing so, there would be some training needs to operationalize and on an ongoing basis, so that is understood and could be submitted as a proposed activity. All costs are assessed based on whether they're allowable, allocable, meaning specific, supported, and reasonable. So we would be assessing all of those things in the process. So that's a long way to say that we would review it. It would be a approved approach as long as it is balanced in the context of operations. So an application that came in focusing on training and technical assistance would not be appropriate, but bringing on new forensic interviewers and conducting forensic interviewing training, and then perhaps providing training over, a refresher every year or whatever is needed in order to keep those staff current in their skills would be considered appropriate and necessary operational expenses. So there is, let me just look at the questions here. Okay, so there's some clarity wanted around eligibility. So the issue with eligibility is in order to do satellite CAC work, you need to be working with a fully accredited CAC, and that's because the fully accredited CAC is meeting the national standards for the model that ensures the oversight of that work. So my recommendation would be anybody who's interested as a tribe and already working in this area or this arena to partner with a fully accredited CAC while you are working to expand your own membership with the NCA. So I see one participant who's an affiliate. One can move from an affiliate to fully accredited over time, and that would be encouraged, and in the meantime, working with a partner. Our goal is to increase capacity across tribes and tribal areas to better serve Indian country. Are there any other questions that anybody would like to clarify? We'll give folks a few more minutes and then give you time back on your day if there's no other questions. So while folks are finishing up or adding any final questions, I will lift up for this is one solicitation of a suite of solicitations that we have coming that are out on the street right now. One, in addition to this one, is the Alaska Child Advocacy Center expansion, which William mentioned. The webinar is tomorrow. And then there is a training and technical assistance provider solicitation that we are looking for training and technical assistance providers to serve across all of Indian country to provide support around CAC development. And so to the question about training and technical assistance, we will be providing additional training and technical assistance to applicants, to the awardees, through this American Indian Alaska Native TNTA provider that will be selected through this competitive cycle. So we will be providing training and technical assistance to you in addition to any local operational needs that you may have that you want incorporated in your budget. All right, so William, I'm not seeing any other questions coming in, so I think we can go ahead and wrap. I'll turn it back to you for any final wrap-up.
Okay, sounds good. And thank you very much, Kristen, for the webinar today. And as I mentioned to the audience as well, just with the announcements, if you have any type of additional questions or if you would like to reach out to OJJDP's INTACT, again, we have our contact information here. I've also mentioned that if you'd like to reach out to OJJDP, remember we have the contact information on this slide as well as for TTA 360. And then we also have these events here, which again, all of the links for each of these webinars are live, meaning that you can click on them and register immediately. Also note, again, for those of you who have come a little later, the handout has all of the information that is presented today. To access the handouts, again, you would just easily click on the name of the handout and then select download, and it will download directly to your computer or device where you're joining from. Also, for anyone who has joined us a little bit late today and you're joining in a group, I've asked for folks just to please type in the total number of additional people in the room with you if there are any. Meaning if you're viewing by yourself, there's no need to type anything at this time. But if you're viewing with others in a group with you, feel free to type in the total number of additional people with you as well. Other than that, we will end today's webinar. Thank you all very much for coming out. Have a wonderful afternoon. Goodbye.
The host has left the meeting, so at this time, the meeting will come to an end. Thank you and goodbye.